Hey everybody, this is Russ from Retro Game Core. We're going to take a break from my regular reviews and tutorials and just do a little bit of speculation talk about a new handheld that was recently announced. It is called the ASUS ROG Ally. And the reason why I think it's worth talking about is it seems to be the very first handheld coming out from a big company that can actually compete with the Valve Steam Deck. And so in this video here, we're going to kind of pick it apart, at least with all the information that we know today, and see whether or not it's something you should be keeping an eye on in the future. Now, there are already a couple good hands-on impressions videos out there, and so I watched them myself, but I came up with a couple extra questions and impressions that I had while watching them, and so that's what we're going to focus on here in this video, specifically what does it mean for me and my audience. Regardless, this is an exciting time for me because we finally have a new challenger in the arena. I love the Steam Deck, but I'd always love to see something a little bit better. And so without any further delay, let's go ahead and jump right in. To start, we're going to talk about size. Now, the Steam Deck is a big handheld. After all, it is quite massive in the hands, as you can see. It has a 7-inch display, but a 16:10 aspect ratio, which just makes it a little bit taller. Honestly, I like taller devices. It just feels really good when you cup them like this. But all the same, I wish this was a little bit smaller. One of the things I've kind of mentioned about this is that I don't really use the trackpads on the Steam Deck, and so I kind of wonder sometimes what it would be like if we didn't have these big things here and how the ergonomics would feel overall. And we can see with smaller handhelds, we get a similar experience. Here is the Aya Neo 2. This one doesn't have trackpads, obviously, but has the same size screen, but is quite a bit smaller than the Steam Deck. This does make it a little bit more portable, but still having a very impressive kind of gaming experience by having that large screen, but with smaller controls. And I'm not really sure what the actual dimensions are just yet, but at least from eyeballing it from the other videos that I saw, I think it's going to be very similar in size to this one here. This is the 1X Player Mini Pro, I think is what it's called. And this one also has that same size screen, 16:10 aspect ratio, but is a little bit more compact. And honestly, just design-wise, it seems to be very similar to this one, or another handheld called the AOK Zoe A1, which I don't have on me right now, but this is going to be the next best bet. And so if we get a handheld that's going to be in this general size, I think it's going to be good. It's a little bit smaller than the Steam Deck, and a little bit lighter as well. And so because of that, yeah, it might be just a little bit more portable than the Steam Deck if that's something that has bothered you. Now, the screen on the ROG Ally is going to be different as well. It will be 7 inches, but 16:9, which is going to mean it's a little bit smaller and compact. That's going to be really good when it comes to playing a lot of PC games because it's going to fill out the screen really well. Because although many games do have 16:10 support, not all do. Now, personally, I prefer 16:10, and that's because when you're playing emulated systems, 4:3 content, or even Game Boy Advance at the 3:2, it looks really stunning and impressive on a taller display like this. And so 16:10 is not a bad thing in my book, but 16:9 will allow it to be a little bit more compact. As an example, the Logitech Cloud is a 16:9 handheld with 7-inch display. So size-wise, it should be very, very similar to this. And this handheld is great when it comes to game streaming because obviously PlayStation and Xbox are in 16:9, but then also when it comes to Switch emulation, which is also 16:9, same thing with PSP. So there are some systems that'll do really well at 16:9 in addition to PC gaming, and that's probably going to be one of the reasons why that ROG Ally is going to be a little bit more compact. Now, another thing that's exciting to me about the Ally is that it has a 120 Hz refresh rate screen. Among all of the handheld PCs that I've tested over the past couple of years, I've never had one that goes over 60, and so I'm really excited to try that out. Personally, I'm the kind of guy that likes to play more indie games or lightweight games, and so because of that, it should easily be able to play at 120 Hz for many of those that support it, and so I'm really looking forward to that experience. Now, while I have the Logitech Cloud up here, let me talk a little bit about ergonomics, which is the next thing that I saw with this device. One of the things I really love about the Logitech G Cloud is the fact that it has this kind of teardrop shape right here on the bottom. It allows your hands to really cup it like this and feel super comfortable when you're holding it. And so I'm hoping that the ROG Ally will be similar in that regard, but looking at the design, I don't really see it. Instead, the ergonomic design is kind of similar to this one right here, where it's a little bit cut off here. It doesn't extend out to the bottom. And so because of that, it's going to feel more like you're angling towards the shoulder buttons like this, as opposed to inwards. And so I don't know, it may feel pretty comfortable. It seems that from the Linus video, he thought it was pretty comfortable when having it at the correct angle, but all the same, I'm a little bit skeptical just in how it's gonna feel in the hand. In fact, a lot of the design traits were similar to this one right here. As you can see, it has a little bit of a bump right here. It also has this nice RGB lighting that I really love. And then same thing with these shoulders and triggers. And so I think the overall ergonomic experience is gonna be very similar to this one right here. It's not a bad thing. I think this is actually a pretty comfortable controller, but it really doesn't hold a candle to something like the Logitech Cloud or the Steam Deck. The reason why I like the ergonomics on the Steam Deck so much is because they're just so full right here. You can see it's just entirely rounded, and this makes it feel like a full gamepad. As you can see with my hand right here, I'm able to grip the entire thing like this as I'm playing, and there's just no experience like that. A lot of that comes from the fact that it's a bigger device too, so it can afford to have that more premium feel. To me, if you're gonna have a smaller device, a good compromise is to really extend the grips like with the Logitech Cloud. I can really cup this very easily as well, as you can see like this, and so this is honestly my second most favorite handheld to use because of the ergonomics like this. So if they had had a more angled, like teardrop shape like this, I think it would have been a better match, but all the same, I don't know, it's hard to tell without having it actually in my hands. One thing that might help with the ROG Ally is the weight. It's going to be a little bit over 600 grams, and so the Steam Deck, I think it's like 670 grams altogether, so it will be, you know, 10-15% lighter than that, and so that might be really handy. Regardless, when it comes to ergonomics, it sounds like ASUS is really kind of thinking about that, and so I'm just going to put a little bit of trust in that, and we'll see when we actually have it in our hands. Now let's talk about the buttons and D-pad and stuff like that. Number one is that I've heard that the buttons themselves are a little bit taller. You know, they're the standard Xbox style buttons, but they have a little bit of wobble to them. This device right here actually has very flat buttons, and so because of that, they're a little bit large, but they don't have any wobble, and so they feel really good. In fact, most of these premium handhelds have really good buttons. You know, the Steam Deck has a little bit more rounded buttons, but no wobble right here. They're a little bit small, but honestly, I got used to them over time. And so we'll see how those work out in terms of the buttons, but the other part of it is the analog sticks. I've been told they are not Hall sensor analog sticks, so much like with the Steam Deck itself, it's going to have these, you know, physical potentiometers. And I know that Hall sensor sticks are all the rage right now. It's kind of the in vogue thing to do, but all the same, it's never been something that's bothered me on the Steam Deck. In fact, I actually have the Hall sensor sticks, but I've never gotten around to replacing them because one, I don't want to take my Steam Deck apart, but then also you have to solder, and I don't know how to do that. And so I haven't ever really gotten to it, but all the same, I like the Steam Deck sticks and I have no problem with them. There are some handhelds like the Neo 2 that do have Hall sensor sticks, and yeah, these do feel better. They're more premium, have a very smooth kind of feel to them. And so yes, I do prefer these ones over the Steam Decks, but honestly, they're still very good for both of them. And so again, it's one of those things, we'll have to see how it goes. You know, are they going to be smaller or bigger or taller? All of those things are really kind of hard to tell with the data that we have right now. Next, let's talk about the D-pad. This one just drives me crazy. Now, all of these other handhelds have these cross-style D-pads. You know, we've got the Steam Deck like that. Even the Logitech Cloud, even though the D-pad isn't great, still has that cross-style function to it. Rubber membrane connections for each of these. Same thing with the Neo 2, as well as the One X player as well. But the thing is, the one from ASUS took a cue what it looks to be from the very worst D-pad of all of these, which is the AOK Zoe A1. That one was just kind of a nightmare to work with. I did an impressions video about that one. I only had the device for a few days, and it was easily the worst of all these D-pads here. It was to the point where I almost recommended that you only play that device with games that don't use a D-pad, or where you just need to hit up and down and left and right. And so I'm a little bit skeptical about the one from ASUS just because it has a very similar sort of design to it. Now, to be fair, if they get it right, it can be really good. After all, many people say that like the Sega Saturn D-pad is one of the best out there. And so if they're able to nail it, then that's awesome. If they're not, then it's just going to be very disappointing. So in summary, when it comes to buttons and things like that, I remain skeptical, but I'm a little bit optimistic that I think they'll do a pretty good job, especially because they're already getting feedback from those impressions videos that they could be better. Now let's talk about performance, and we don't have a lot of data here. The company has said that yes, it's going to have twice the performance of the Steam Deck, which is kind of amazing. But then also, you know, it says that it's going to run really well at lower wattages too. It's a custom built AMD chip, and so not a lot is known right now. And honestly, I'm not a chip kind of guy, and so I couldn't really speculate on it very well anyway. But here's the way I see things. I honestly don't usually play a lot of like premier AAA titles on my Steam Deck anyway. As you can see, my most recently played game is BioShock Infinite. I'm actually almost done beating this game for the second time, and so I'm really looking forward to finishing that experience experience, and that's the kind of game I like to play. When it comes to like the latest and greatest, honestly, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me when it comes to a handheld. When it comes to something like a big screen game, I want to play it on a big screen. So those are the type of games I'm going to play on my bigger monitor, on my PS5 or Xbox or something else like that. Now, I do have one small caveat on here. It's just kind of a weird personal thing, but I cannot play Resident Evil 4, like the new one, on my computer. It's just too scary. But I found that playing it on a handheld makes it a little bit more palatable. And so something like that, sure, I'll play the latest like AAA game, but that is a very rare thing. In general, I like to play just kind of the older games on here, those that get better battery life and can run really, really smoothly. And so yeah, it's exciting that this one might be able to play more games, and maybe it'll get to that point where I will want to play it on a handheld, but with the Steam Deck at least, that's not really a priority for me. And I think that's a good segue to the last section I want to talk about here, which is going to be these additional features that are found in that handheld that I want to discuss. Number one is that it has external GPU support. This is a little bit funky. It's not Thunderbolt 4 or USB 4. It's actually a proprietary connection that they have for one specific external GPU, also made by ASUS. And this is called the ROG XG Mobile, and honestly, I'd never heard of it until the other day when the handheld was released, and so I did a little bit of digging. And essentially, this is an external GPU solution. So you take your handheld, you plug it in with the proprietary cable into this thing that looks kind of like this small tablet, and that will have DisplayPort or HDMI out, so you can put it onto a TV or, like a computer monitor. And so this is a way to basically make the computer dockable, but then also improve the performance with a smallish form factor. Now, the thing is, with that smaller form factor, it does come with a cost. After all, it's using a mobile graphics card inside. It's not going to be one of those full desktop ones, and it is quite expensive. For example, right now, if you wanted to get that external GPU with a 3080 inside, it's going to be about $1,500. And we don't know what the price of the handheld is going to be. I'm hearing everything from $500, which I don't think is going to be, all the way up to like $1,000. Personally, I think if they can get it around $600 or $700 with that kind of performance, then it'll be a pretty good deal. Yeah, it'll still be more expensive than the Steam Deck, but it'll probably be a little bit more justified just having that additional power and maybe that better screen as well. And so I'm pretty interested in about having a dockable solution like this. The idea that you can play on a handheld and then plug it into something else without having to have a standalone desktop PC to kind of manage between the two. You just have one, and then it's just going to be a little bit more powerful when you plug it in. If anything, it's very similar to that Nintendo Switch Pro idea. The idea here is that you can play your game at a lower resolution in handheld mode, but then when you plug it in, you'll be able to do a higher resolution or maybe a better frame rate. Additionally, I like the idea of being able to use this as basically your whole computer all in one. You could do video editing and everything else on that. With the eGPU, you can probably run through all that stuff with no problem. You hook an external hard drive to that side on the dock, and then all of a sudden, yes, you've got a handheld PC for your favorite games, and then you've got a full-fledged PC when you plug it in. Now, of course, this will be much more expensive than having a desktop PC and then some other cheaper handheld like the Steam Deck, but all the same, I don't know, I like the idea of having it all in one. And then finally, the last feature that's really kind of exciting to me is that they're partnering with Best Buy for this. In fact, in order to sign up to get more information about the handheld, I had to go onto Best Buy's website and give my email address. I love the idea of being able to walk into a store, pick up one of these devices, and then walk out. The Logitech Cloud is kind of the closest thing to that in the fact that you can get it on Amazon, and I think it's in Best Buy in some stores. I'm not really sure about that, but I love that idea. Like this thing that you can just kind of pick this up at a store, and then maybe they have the eGPU there as well, and you're ready to go on day one. If you remember, I ordered this Steam Deck back in July of 2021, and then I finally got it in May of 2022. Now the wait is not like that for the Steam Deck anymore, especially if in the United States, it can be like a week or two from the time you order it. But all the same, it doesn't beat the fact that you could walk into a store and pick it up. And I think it's going to be really good for the handheld world in general. The idea that they'll just have these on shelves means that more people will be interested in it. They'll say, hey, what is this thing? It kind of looks like a Nintendo Switch. And those kind of customers, those that are kind of walking in and just being exposed to it right then, that's also a pretty potential big market right there. And I think the more and more that these things become mainstream, the better deal it's going to be for everybody else. And so I'm pretty excited about that concept as well. Anyway, that's really about it for this video here. I don't want to take too much time talking about a device I don't have in my hands, but I thought there was enough information here to make a video about it and share with everyone else. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Specifically, what price do you think is going to be worth it for you? Personally, I think around $600 is going to be a must-buy for me, but I'm interested to hear what you say. As always, thank you for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful, and we will see you next time. Happy gaming.